every terrorist's favorite journalist was on CNN. Was it yesterday? Uh, Once again, presumably explaining why slaughtering the Jews is a good thing or something to that effect. But he unfortunately had an incident where somebody was not a fan of him on the panel. How CNN let that happen, I don't know. But yeah, Ryan Girdusky was on that panel, and at some point in an exchange with Mehdi Hasan, said to him, "I hope your beeper doesn't go off." A reference to some of Mehdi's best friends in Hezbollah suffering some injuries when their pagers exploded. But yeah, as I just said on the Daily Objective with Adam Mossoff, that sounded to me like he wished him well, which is why I would have kicked him off the panel, but CNN kicked him off for different reasons. Right, no, of course, right after letting Mehdi explain to the world that this is Islamophobic. It's because he's brown. Yeah, can I speak on behalf of brown people? You're not one of us anymore, Mehdi. You're officially white. Uh, Welcome to the reality show. Sorry for the delay in starting. I'm joined by Marco, Richard, Jonathan. Richard, were you do you usually watch CNN live every evening, right? Or were you
Round the
watching?
clock. Yeah, sure. Yeah, if I wanted to whip myself, like, yeah, no, I don't. I avoid it as much as possible, and I certainly avoid Mehdi Hasan as much as possible, as any rational human would. But of course, for this show, we have to see a bit of him, and we did see him, and we saw him in his usual form, which is competing in the Outrage Olympics, where he's awarding himself a victim medal while standing on a podium that's been pre-painted with pro-Palestinian colours. So the game was fixed before he even stepped up, and this is just the outcome of that. So it's no surprise that we're seeing this pattern, and of course, this also, and I'm sure we'll discuss this in the course of this. This also touches on jokes and exaggeration and humor within the way that's one direction only in terms of who can use those in arguments, who can't, who is suddenly offended by anything that amounts to a piece of levity, even if it's for exaggeration, even if it's about a difficult, tricky area, difficult topic. That's all within this debate. But yeah, he played the full pantomime effect of being offended, and you saw that in full form. So nothing new.
Well, what would you expect from Mehdi Hasan? I mean, I met the guy through, well, not met him physically, otherwise I would have punched him. But I've learned about the guy thanks to this channel. Thank you very much, Razi. And I mean, the guy is an unspeakably evil person. As I mentioned before, during a debate with Elon Levy, given the chance to wear the yellow ribbon for the hostages, which is still held by the people he supports, he refused to do so. He never wore it, and despite claiming he's pro peace, pro hostages all over the world, and all this kind of crap. So he's a master on presenting himself as the victim, the person who's just stand up for injustice because, oh, look at me, I'm not white, therefore I'm oppressed. And his whole attitude is absolutely repellent. On the side of the BBC, well, they are as evil as he is, at least, because to chastise somebody for making a joke.
It's for CNN, this one.
Sorry, CNN. To chastise somebody for making a joke, when you actually have a guest like Hassan, who's been praising Islamic ideology and calling non-Muslims animals and all sort of extremist bullshit came out of his mouth, even though he retracted later on, whatever. I mean, really? Because somebody from the right makes a joke, it's unacceptable. Ignoring the fact that most of the lefties, most of the communities are actually on the left. Just look at the BBC. You're not going to find anyone who's not a lefty. But yeah, it's unacceptable because he made a kind of joke that it's not particularly funny because funny would have been like, I hope your pager goes off. But yeah. Thank you for being here again. Let's talk about this guy. And great.
Yes, we look, this first of all, this is our service to our viewers. As we say, we watch this so you don't have to, although it's this clip is somewhat entertaining, but yeah, Jonathan, your thoughts.
This gentleman is a very sophisticated propagandist in service of Qatar, in service of Islamism. He is presented as a well-articulated British accent, is well-dressed. He has the right mask. He's wearing legitimacy. He looks like a legitimate person that just a normal, reasonable guest to have in a show. Whereas, as a matter of fact, he supports an ideology that is rather destructive to the world, if I would put it mildly. So he understands very well. He really knows all the right buttons, and he uses all the right terms to appease the left, the weak left, the weak progressive people. He exactly knows them. He knows exactly what to say, and then he can use all of their moral weapons against the people who support Western civilization. He uses that against them to present himself as a decent human being. And the fact that the guy, I don't know who the guy who was fired by CNN, by the way, good for him for not being on CNN anymore. I think it's a positive change in his career. But the guy, why did he apologize? That was kind of weak. Why would you apologize for that? I thought it was a very decent thing to say, given that he's basically funded by people who fund Hezbollah. So it makes sense that he would have a beeper, right? So I think it's a very acceptable joke to say. And yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. You say Mehdi knows all the right buttons to push, so he has nothing to worry about when it comes to his pager. By the way, to me, the most offensive thing is that this person said was that he wishes that he hopes his pager doesn't go off, because I definitely don't share that sentiment. And thank you, Alex, for the super chat. Alex says Mehdi makes me long for Goebbels. I don't know. I put them up there together. But yeah. Look, this guy, it's not the first time we talk about him, right? And he was fired by MSNBC earlier in this war, which is, MSNBC makes CNN look conservative. And he went too far for them. So then he went full on funded by the people who fund terrorists. So it says something about these people that every time they're criticized, they go towards the Islamophobia, or they play the race card, because Mehdi, there are brown people, there are even Arab people, believe it or not, who don't actually support terrorism. It is not your genes that made you support terrorism. It is you. It's your choice. And even now, you can actually reverse course and try to become a decent human being. Some of us will not forgive, everything you've done up until now, but maybe some others will. And so yeah, Mehdi, every single day that you support terrorism, it is on you that you support terrorism. By the way, this clip is available online. We're not going to play it because it will be removed by YouTube. But if you are watching this on X, you can watch that video. It's we're going to edit it in right now. Marco.
Yeah, I mean, you're totally right. Earlier on in the cutting edge, they were saying, talking about free will, and they were saying the fact that an action is taken after you set a goal, and the goal depends on what your philosophy, what you think, how you see the world. So these kind of people, especially this guy who's educated in Oxford, always takes the side of this fictitious population called Palestinians, coming from this mythical place called Palestine. whose purpose is to destroy Israel. I mean, a number of times there's been the possibility for them to actually live in peace, sharing the piece of land with Israel, and they always turned it down because their goal is to destroy Israel. They don't want Israel, they don't want Jews anywhere near them. And that means anywhere on the planet, really. Just look at the X account of Khamenei, how specific, how open he is about declaring the death of Jews. And then, after the Jews, it's going to be us in the West. And they even have a doomsday clock in Tehran to count the day until Israel is destroyed. I mean, these guys are serious. They are quite honest when they tell you they want to destroy civilization. They hate Jews and they hate us, and we still don't listen to them. Mehdi Hasan, in one of his Islamic rants a few years ago, he made the point that Islam doesn't compromise on its ideals, doesn't compromise on this principle of hate and destruction. He didn't put it in these exact words, but effectively it's quite clear about the fact that Islamic ideals have got a purpose and they will not compromise. They will not come down to a table and decide, okay, I'll take a bit of this, you have a bit of that. No, it's just, it's destruction or death, really. And we've seen it a number of times. That's why Islamic terrorism is so brutal. It's so, they're radicalized, they're extremists in the worst sense of meaning of the word. So people like him should not be allowed to play the victim card. You cannot feel any sympathy for this guy when he said, oh, well, I'm used to be called anti-Semitism because I support the Palestinians. Yes, because you support the very people who commit this atrocity day in, day out for the last 80 years. I mean, what the hell? At what point are you going to realize that the team you support is actually team death?
Yeah, I think if you look at this particular, I don't want to call it a debate. A debate is elevating it to a status it doesn't deserve, frankly, because it's an Italian TV style yellathon. It's Jerry Springer does political debate, where they all yell all over each other and you can't hear a word. But this is the case where you've got what would seem to be a whole raft of people on one side and one guy trying to hold the argument for the other side. Now, I suspect they don't lay it out like that. I suspect they claim there's more balance on the panel of people around the table, but that's certainly the impression you get when you watch it. And of course, that's the slant that it's given. And it's no surprise that I think when they went to an ad break, they then they announced that this guy Ryan Gidersky would not be on again, but that Hassan, although he didn't appear, Mehdi Hasan, although he didn't appear again, would be welcome back to express his views on Hamas supporting terrorism, on Hezbollah being, unfairly blown up by the pages in their pockets, no doubt. So, I mean, these are the steps that follow from his arguments, because his arguments are essentially that the Palestinians or the Arabs that want to kill the Jews are correct, whether they do it through Hamas or Hezbollah or the Houthis or whatever. That's what he's essentially arguing for. So in that context, what you're talking about is the fact that Israel has taken actions against such people with things such as the pager, the pager, using the pagers to stop such attacks, and anyone that is advocating for such things, runs the risk of becoming the terrorists which should then have their pocket explode right next to their kahunas.
Jonathan.
Marco touched exactly on the point on what makes Mr. Hassan so powerful, and why I agree that he is very good in debate. With the people he talks with, he is destroying them. A lot of the people who are supposed to be pro-Israel, because they're so weak, because they don't have a moral argument, and he has a moral argument. And as he said in the bit we saw earlier, he understands that the moral high ground is what is going to lead them victorious. And the West doesn't have a moral high ground. So as long as you be consistently moral, you will win. And from that perspective, he's 100% right. But it should be the opposite ideas. We should be morally consistent on the right ideas. And unfortunately, the people who support Israel are not consistent. And Hassan can use their inconsistency and weaponize it against them. And that's what he's doing. And that's why he's being so successful at his work. I think he's being a very effective propagandist. And we should take him very seriously.
Christopher says in the chat, this guy, he's not a good guy. Yeah, that pretty much sums it up. Izzo True says, Bassem Youssef is one of the most pathetic excuses for a talk show guest ever. Look, but people actually listen to the guy, and that's a thing. You know, Bassem Youssef, it's a good-looking guy. He speaks coherently, you know, and he's funny. Funny people get away with murder. In this case, literally, at least advocating for murder. It really is shocking that the views that people like Bassem Youssef express are welcome in mainstream media and mainstream conversations, and it tells you that it really is a sign of the times. You know, I was just doing the Daily Objective with Adam Mossoff, and I said at the end, if you're going to follow one person on Twitter related to this war, it should be Adam Mossoff. He had this great, simple but great tweet a few days ago. I don't remember exactly, but something to the effect of, if you've ever wondered what you would have been doing in 1930s Germany, you're doing it now. And people who choose to have Bassem Youssef on are doing what they would have been doing. The name would have been Bassem or Yusuf, but the ideas, at least when it comes to the Jews, are similar. And the same goes for Mehdi Hasan. Somebody in the chat says 2017 Hamas charter specifies that the enemy is Zionists, not Jews. And this person, of course, we don't read troll names, but I will just say your name is absolutely what you are when it comes to Hamas and you being you know, interpreting them for us. They certainly meant Zionists on October 7th of last year, right? They you know, stopped, asked people their ideology, as if that would make it okay. Yeah, but they stopped, asked people their ideology. You know, the babies that they killed or took hostage, and you know, the video of a child being surrounded by other children while adults are orchestrating how they bully that child. That's all because of the child's ideology. Yes, that is the kind of people that Mehdi Hasan kind of creates, in a sense. This is the outcome of such people. Let me quickly read the statement by CNN. CNN says, there is zero room for racism or bigotry at CNN or on our air. We aim to foster thoughtful conversations and debate, including between people who profoundly disagree with each other, in order to explore important issues and promote mutual understanding. But we will not allow guests to be demeaned or for the line of civility to be crossed. Ryan Gerdusky will not be welcomed back at our network. Again, let's remember, when we hear that statement, let's remember exactly what he said. He said, I hope your beeper doesn't go off. That is the statement to somebody who has been supporting openly Hamas. Hezbollah has been making excuses for any terrorist on the planet who targets Israel, and has been opposing any attempt by Israel to prevent the killing of their citizens. That is CNN's position, which says more you know, more in the words that it doesn't say than in the words that it does. Richard.
Yeah, and of course he works for Al Jazeera, doesn't he? The network which made that despicable documentary justifying October the 7th. And any look at that network will tell you exactly what despicable attitude he's promoting, really. And I think it's the fact that he throws his hands up and says, "How dare you say that? I can't believe you said that," which is essentially the attitude to it. And everybody else is continuing on the debate because at that moment they don't quite realize that, oh, there's some red meat on the table and we should all go for it. And then as he keeps pressing the point, they suddenly realize, oh, he's got him on the ropes as a victim, and they all pile in. So and of course then the network piles in, and this is the way that a mob works. This is how a mob acts, not thinking. They just see an opportunity to kick and punch. And you know, that is not the whatever you described it as, intellectual debate or reasoned debate with people who disagree with each other. It's not. It's a ruckus, and it's intended to be so. So you know, if you just want to watch animals fighting in a pen, you know, watch animals fighting in a pen. It's not going to be it's not going to elevate your understanding of the conflict or of any aspect of geopolitics or anything else, quite frankly.
I mean, the CN policy and stance is quite laughable, to be honest, because as I said earlier on, the fact that they kick out Ryan Gdarsky, which makes me mad, the fact that I have to feel sorry for this guy whom I don't particularly like. I don't think he's a very good guy, but anyway, he's certainly nowhere near the level of bad that Hassan is. And the fact that Hassan has got the past he's got, and he's still allowed to appear on the CNN and spew his propaganda, his pro-Hamas propaganda, his anti-Israel, his openly anti-Semitic propaganda. That's the thing that actually annoys me. But the kind of behavior the panel is the typical behavior that we're seeing Joe Floyd. When these lefties smell blood, they lose their shit and they go for the kill. They behave so irrationally, and they all pile up, trying to get a little bit of righteousness out there just to make their Facebook account, feed, or Instagram, whatever they use, make it look like, look at me, I'm such a good person. And just look at the behavior of some of the hosts. I think one of them said, I'm not Puerto Rican, but talking about the joke from Trump rally, I'm not Puerto Rican, but I'm offended for them. So being offended is something that you can adopt. You can be offended for somebody who's got nothing to do with you, somebody who's haven't even looked at you, somebody who doesn't even know who you are, but you feel offended for whatever somebody else did. Because being offended is the ultimate badge of honor if you are a lefty who doesn't have any ideology, but being offended, oh, it must be good, isn't it? I'm offended.
Well, then I'm offended by Mehdi Hasan, not just on behalf of brown people, but white people and black people as well. Usually I go around the horn before I go to the super chats, but I'm going to make an exception here because before I go to Jonathan, I need to read Jonathan's super chat. Jonathan says, follow Jonathan on Instagram. Philosophical James Bond travels world in three-piece, advocating reason. That should be your new Instagram profile description. Jonathan.
Thank you, Jonathan. You can look for Jonathan _ DAON. Yeah, speaking of the panel, I mean, what a bunch of crybabies. You can see how they go mental, pretending to be so offended. Well, it's such an obvious act. Like, why would you care so much about this random guy from a panel? Why would you be so madly offended by that? And who cares if you're offended? I'm offended all the time by a lot of things, and that doesn't have any any worth, any intellectual worth. It's meaningless. I'm offended by this person who walks in in sweatpants in the middle of a business day. That's offensive, but I won't morally use that as a weapon. I mean, why would you even go to such a panel? Or why would you even be on CNN? Why would you even be in front of this guy, of this evil, disgusting guy? And again, his apology kind of bothers me. I'm sure he's regretting saying the apology because he got kicked anyway. Didn't help him. So it's a nice comment to make if you're like saying, "Oh, I'm going," like you're final panel on CNN, you know you're going to kicked out, so you want to go out with a banger. I thought that would have been much cooler. And yeah, and I also I don't think the joke was very tasteful. What was his name? Tony made. I don't think it was. I didn't find it funny. But yeah.
It kind of reminds me, although this is very different, but a few years ago, there was this sports anchor that was his name is Clay Travis, and I think he's well known in the U.S. He was also on CNN, and I watched this clip a few times, but I don't remember the context. But at some point he says to basically to the host, there's only two things I believe in. The First Amendment and boobs. And the host was like, she was so offended. And she's like, hang on a second. He keeps talking, of course. She's like, hang on a second. Did you say booze or boobs? And she was just very, very upset when she realized that the answer was the latter. This is, of course, a very different situation. But yeah, people, getting offended by a joke, especially on the air, especially if it's CNN, which is supposed to be, strict news. Don't you dare make a joke. Certainly one that is, outside this ever narrowing, spectrum of what jokes are allowed. Blake Travis didn't apologize as far as I remember. This guy apologized on the spot. It wasn't as out there a joke. But yeah, something that I've brought up before when you talk about Mehdi Hasan, which is the first time I encountered him was on BBC One's Question Time, which is a show, a panel show that is on weekly here, discussing politics and so on. And this was right after the Charlie Hebdo terrorist attack. And the first thing he said was, just because it's legal, it's not illegal to fart in an elevator doesn't mean you have to do that, or doesn't mean you should do that, which is his way of saying, basically, this pedophile that we all admire, don't you dare draw him. That was the essence of it. By the way, he was, as far as I know, not banned from the BBC for saying, look, yeah, maybe they shouldn't have been shot, but it's kind of their fault. So that I think, for my journey with Mehdi Hasan, certainly that was a proper starting point, because he lived up to the kind of image that I had of him, that he built up at that point. Let me quickly go to some more super chats. Thank you, PC. PC says he is another anti-Israel person. Too many to count. Yes, but we're trying, and we are also trying to do shows about each and every one of them. Thank you, Jonathan, for another super chat. Jonathan says, shout out Richard and Marco. Short clips getting a lot of traction online. Yeah, that's as a bio, not as good, but absolutely true. Make sure you check out. We usually say this at the end, but with a super chat, we can say this in the middle. Make sure you check out the Briefly Objective. Thank you, Alexis, for the super chat. Alexis says, that's what it takes to be banned from CNN. Here goes my hopes to be a regular guest. I'd say quite a bit more. I'm sure you would, and I would love to hear that. I don't know if what any of our chances are. By the way, Jonathan, you said, why would anybody go on CNN? I would go. If they invite me, I would go. I don't know if I would go on a panel with Mehdi Hasan. I think that's a bit beyond the pale, that guy. But that's not a reference to his skin color.
If you would go there, Razi, they will try to grill you alive. It's like walking into a death trap.
Yes, I mean, you go to such a place. Look, I think ARCUK would gain some subscribers if I was on CNN. So for that purpose, I would go.
That's true.
And thank you, Biram, for the super chat. Biram says, I am a left and I support Israel. I'm sick of y'all painting with a giant brush. Picking side in the U.S. politics is the dumbest thing one can do. I don't know if it's the dumbest thing one can do, but yeah, look, there are no good sides in U.S. politics, but there are many. Trump said after that rally there were good people on both sides. My issue with that was no, there were bad people on both sides. There are bad people on both sides now, and I think it's even clearer to see nowadays. But yeah, don't worry, we criticize. Look, search Candace Owens on our channel and see what you come up with. Richard.
Well, I mean, what are you allowed to joke about now? Is part of the question, isn't it? I mean, what are you're allowed to joke about? What? There are no jokes anymore. It's lectures on climate change. It's lectures on the equivalence of different cultures, whether that's genital mutilation, although frankly, I could be talking about Western culture or certain African cultures when it comes to that, to be honest. That's probably a poor example. But or women's rights, for example, all of those kind of things are not compared properly when it comes to comparing cultures. They're not laid out as they should be. So jokes become ever more pathetic, ever more dead in the water. And we've seen that throughout comedy. That's why comedy's essentially been dying for the last 10 years. Certainly as the woke culture is annihilated it from anything that was remotely funny. So what are you left with? You're left with people shouting, ranting, and pretending to be offended. And that's an unsightly mess. Not entertaining either.
Yeah, I mean, the real irony here is the fact that this chastising comes from the network that had one of his guys reporting in front of a building on fire and saying that the protests were largely peaceful. I mean, really, are we ever going to take anything that they say seriously? How can you do that when they're demonstrating more and more, thousands of times, that they're actually not of the side of showing reality? They're just on the side of, throw in some propaganda, throw some red meat on one side or the other, and just see the scrum on the floor. Because they just care about the ratings. They don't really care about doing the job that they're supposed to do, i.e., looking at the fact and try to establish what's going on. Because if you did that, I mean, it doesn't take that long. Just look at some of the information out there, and you will realize that anyone who turns up and say, "I am pro-Palestinian," you're just either a buffoon, either thick as two planks, or you're just evil. You're just a pure piece of evil. There's no way that from the image we've seen broadcasted by the very terrorists while they were butchering over 1,000 people and taking hostages, which are still held, by the way, and nobody talks about it. If you don't believe that, well, you're not going to believe anything. So you might well just jump down a cliff and reduce your carbon emissions.
Jonathan.
Yeah, I think the most important lesson we should learn from this guy, Mehdi, is that instead of apologizing and groveling before these progressives, for the lack of a better word, the way is to take the moral high ground ourselves and say to Mr. Hassan, you are the racist, you are the mystic, you are the one who advocates for murder and death. You are the one who undermines the very foundation of the country that you're living in. He's a big danger for the UK. People like him who have effectively overtaken much of England by now, these Islamists. He is number one. His likes are the number one danger for the future of Western civilization. And we must unmask them and show their true disgusting selves, that they are financed by Al Jazeera and Iran and whoever, the worst enemies of the West, the people who have a lot of Jewish blood, British blood, American blood on their hands, and they are hungry for more. Unless we do that and we unmask him, he will only continue to be popular and prevail And unfortunately, all the Hasbara people are so pathetic that they can't say these things. They subscribe to the moral relativism. They won't say, no, Western civilization is superior. Islam is the biggest danger to the West. They won't say that. A very few of them will. So we have to take the moral high ground and show how disgusting and dangerous and evil this person really is.
Yeah, or more than we have to take the moral high ground, we have to realize we have the moral high ground and act like it. Thank you, PC, for another super chat. PC says Candace Owens was banned from Australia. I'm not sure who's getting the short end of that stick. But anyway, thank you. Thank you, Jonathan, for another super chat. Jonathan says, Razi, hardest working philosophy podcaster in show business. Thank you. That's a very nice and factually accurate compliment. Izzo Truth asks, is there a 12-step program for overuse of logical fallacies that we can refer one of the trolls in the chat to? Yes. 7 episodes a week of the Daily Objective, 5 episodes a week of the reality show. That adds up to 12 steps. This guy that you're referring to has been here for hundreds of steps, and that still hasn't helped. So yeah, some people, fall off the wagon or never get on it.
May I also add, if you pay a little subscription, you can take part to the Leonard Peikoff's course on logic, and that's going to help them to, work out how wrong they are.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that is additional steps. But yeah, there are people who are too far gone. And Mehdi Hasan, as I mentioned, yeah, he has free will. It would as transformation stories go, I think if he actually ever became a decent human being, that would be one of the most amazing, something that you can't imagine any of those makeover shows doing to anybody externally, and this is more difficult. But yeah, again, I go back to the point that it's the fact that people with such views exist is one thing. The fact that the most mainstream of sources of news outlets choose to have them on, and again, choose to have them on to apologize to them when they get criticized, really is very much a sign of the times, and not a good one. Richard.
I think one of the things you can do is look at what he said on other shows and other tweets and things. I mean, when he was on Piers Morgan asked him repeatedly, "Do you condemn Hamas?" Which doesn't strike me as a tricky question. Doesn't strike me as it's got an awful trap laid in it. It ought to be very easy to say yes to that. But of course, he quibbles, he evades, and eventually comes across as a racist double standard. So debating with such a person is utterly pointless, to be honest, because you can't debate with a completely irrational response, because that's what it is. You can just point out that it is irrational. I mean, in one of his tweets, he tries to go for the, I'm an impartial, neutral, I just want everyone to love each other type of attitude, with Jews aren't to blame for the actions of Israel, Muslims aren't to blame for the actions of Hamas, let's stop the bigotry. Right. Of course, Muslims and Hamas, what you're equating there is Israel and Hamas. That's what you're actually trying to do, because you're saying in one case it's Israel, in the other case it's Hamas, but there's also Palestinians who are completely separate and innocent in his view, whereas Israel encompasses everyone who's a Zionist, a Jew, or an Israeli. So yeah, you can see it in all of his arguments. I just wanted to pick up also on what I didn't know whether to go down this route, to be honest. But when Jonathan, when you use the phrase that these kind of people have overtaken much of England, that makes me twitch a little bit, because I think we're not that far gone yet. But you do also have a point. So it's hard to say. And obviously he's British as well, and we've tried to farm him out and leave him in the United States, but he does keep coming back like a bagged smell. Yeah, and of course he's now working for Al Jazeera anyway. So it would be nice if maybe he stayed in Qatar. But again, that might be too much to hope for. But yes, there is far too much influence of his kind of arguments across England and across the TV sets of England, particularly in the state-funded broadcaster of the BBC. But, you know, Channel 4, which tends to ape them in many ways, is just as bad. And it's the BBC that kind of set the standard for everything. And of course, he's come from Oxford University, and the kind of debating that you see at Oxford University debates, if you watch many of them, they'll all have that particular kind of attitude of quick fire bullying, essentially, without argument. That's a big feature of it, with a pretty obvious outcome when you see how they're going to vote at the end of it, because of the nature of education, because of how the students have been taught in institutions such as Oxford. No different, of course, from those in the US, which we've highlighted before. The Harvards, etc., have all fallen foul of the same warped ideology and the same inability to think rationally and make sensible arguments.
Yeah, I just you know, speaking of trying to farm out people to the US, we tried that with Piers Morgan as well. He replaced Larry King on CNN, and that lasted about as long. I don't know. I'm watching this baseball documentary. Watched this baseball documentary on Netflix about the Red Sox 2004 World Series win. And there's a point before they win, and that they had a very, very unfortunate loss. And the owner recalls how he asked the person next to him, "Can we fire the manager now, or do we have to wait until the end of the game?" And I think that's kind of how CNN felt when they had Piers Morgan on. Mehdi Hasan lasted longer in MSNBC, but he was if you're too pro-terrorist for MSNBC, this says something. Marco.
Yeah, I mean, Hassan was working for, as you said, MSNBC. Then he left. He set up his own outfit, from which was freer to spew out propaganda. And then he decided to go back to his friend in Al Jazeera in Qatar because, you know, a fixed salary is safer, and also from there he can get direct information from the leaders of Hamas. So perhaps he feels more in touch with his sources all the time. But the people who follow him, the people, I mean, we're talking about millions, hundreds of thousands of people who follow him, are the usual woke brigade. And these people must be so screwed up in their heads because they hold this woke ideology where everybody with their own characteristic is a unique thing, and you know, they're victims, they have to be helped, all this kind of crap. And at the same time, they support Palestine. So I mean, how can you support the very culture that goes directly against all your different groups, your alphabet people, LGBTQ people? I mean, that's ridiculous. You cannot possibly be a functional human being and hold this kind of enormous contradiction in your head. Just like you cannot be in support of Israel and against Ukraine, or you cannot be in support of Gaza and argue that Russia is not the same kind of aggressor that the Gazans are, the Palestinians are. So this kind of lack of thinking, as Richard pointed out, all these students that support openly, you know, intifada, world intifada, which means effectively slaughtering people in order to set up a dictatorship based on the belief of some ghost in the sky, it just betrays the extent to which they do not think. They abrogate every need to think or every conclusion to somebody else who chews it, digests it, and vomits it onto them, and they take it as manna from the sky. It's sad to see, but again, it's their choice. It doesn't take that much to open your eyes and start thinking with your head. We all have one. Just use it.
Jonathan.
If I may comment, there was a comment that I think touches on an important point. Asked if we condemn supposedly there was a big killing of a lot of Palestinians in Beit Lahia. I haven't seen the full what happened there, but in principle, and this is an important point, whatever people say that, like Piers Morgan like to ask if people condemn Hamas, and then people who they think they are very sophisticated. They ask, oh, but do you also condemn the IDF? And the answer is, of course, absolutely not. I support the IDF 100%. The only instance in which I condemn the IDF are instances in which it foolishly sacrifices its own soldiers in order to save Palestinian or Lebanese or Iraqi or whatever lives. That is the only case in which I condemn the IDF. So if the IDF toppled a building in that neighborhood in Gaza, leading to a lot of deaths of the so-called Palestinian civilians, so-called, that is 100% the result of October 7th, and therefore Hamas is to blame, the Palestinian people are to blame, not the IDF. So I do not condemn them. I support them for defending my country, for saving Jewish lives against these brutal enemies of ours. So absolutely, we do not condemn it. There is no moral equivalency between these sides.
Thank you, PC, for the super chat. PC says Bernie Sanders says Harris will turn on Israel. Yeah, I mentioned that on the Daily Objective. I saw it on Michael Kaufman's LinkedIn. Yeah, I believe Bernie when he says that, as I usually do when evil people say evil things are coming. He probably knows what he's talking about, and you know. Will Harris get that opportunity is a different question. If you look at what the polls and the bookies are saying, I think that's it's not too likely. But we will have some content about the election in the coming week, starting right after the Atlas Shrugged Book Club, which is starting in 7 minutes. An hour later, on our Substack, which if you're not subscribed to, you should subscribe to. You should become a paid subscriber, but this will be available for free subscribers as well. We will have an article titled Anti-Trumpites for Trump, written by Leonard Peikoff, the first essay by Leonard Peikoff in many, many years. Tomorrow on this channel, James Valiant interviews Leonard Peikoff, and then every day from Thursday until Election Day, a new video, members only, YouTube members as well, of Leonard Peikoff being asked the question, a different person each time, about his essay and about the election. So make sure you subscribe to our Substack, become a member so you can watch. Most of the content with Peikoff is going to be behind that paywall. So make sure you
if I may, Razi, before that, speaking of elections, there was an election in Georgia a few days ago, and there has been, as far as I can tell, a lot of election fraud there, orchestrated by the Russians as a takeover of the country of Georgia, which is overwhelmingly pro-Western world, pro-Israel, pro-Ukraine, pro-Europe, pro-America. I just want to voice my solidarity with the Georgian people and all the strength and continue to fight.
Yeah, and we might, if possible, we might do a show on that. Thank you, Alexis, for the super chat. Alexis says, after this, I need my weekly dose of sanity through the Atlas Shrugged Book Club. Are you saying we're your, twice daily dose of insanity? Yeah, the Atlas Shrugged Book Club, as Alexis mentioned, as I mentioned, is right after this show. If you want to watch all that Peikoff content, and you're not a member, you will have to become one. You might as well do it now, so you have access to the Atlas Shrugged Book Club that is starting in 5 minutes. Parting thoughts, and where can people find more from you, Richard and Marco?
Yeah, well, I just wanted to put a plug in for Jonathan, to be honest, because I read his piece on the Substack for Philosophy I Need It on Georgia, and it's definitely worth a read, and it's a very good place to start to understand, particularly with Jonathan having been there recently for a good period and spoken to actual Georgians instead of just taking the headlines from, some news office in some other city. So it's definitely worth a read. So yeah, certainly want to recommend that. From our point of view, you can find us on the Briefly Objective For shorter content below, it says where to connect to that, which is a YouTube channel of shorter content taken from this channel with visual imagery added to enforce the message. So that's good for your social feeds as well, for making a point, particularly to the brains bigger than Mehdi Hasan, or at least those more open to the possibility of listening.
And we're also posting stuff on Substack, but now the Peacock is there, I feel like a writing poster, so perhaps you might want to avoid that one.
Jonathan, parting thoughts, and is there anything you want to promote that hasn't been promoted by both panelists and super chatters?
Thank you for the promotion, Richard. Subscribe to my Substack, link in the description, and voice your support for the Georgians. I have a lot of friends in Georgia. They have been overwhelmingly supportive of Israel. We should reciprocate. They are good people. So voice your support for them.
Thank you. I am Razi Ginsburg on X. Of course, once again, for people just joining us, I will promote once again the fact that we have an essay by Peikoff, a new one in an hour. Not something that has been said a lot in recent years or at all. So make sure you check that out. Yeah, thanks guys for joining me. Thanks everybody for watching. The Atlas Shrugged Book Club starts in 3 minutes.
Thank you.
Bye.